So we hear a lot in the media, women, empowerment, and this notion of having it all. It's either a debate about whether we can have it all or not. And I can tell you that about 10 years ago, I was 24, okay, maybe it was 11 years ago, I thought I had it all. I lived in a beautiful suburb of Sydney. I drove a very sexy convertible car. I got out and exercised 4 to 5 times a week. I was a bit of a health nut. And I had an active social life. And I also was a very senior manager, one of the only females in a male-dominated environment at Channel 10. So I held my own in the boardrooms of men, some much older, much more experienced men. I was earning 6 figures, and I kind of thought I had it all going on. You know, I had it all, and I was doing it all. And I thought at that time that me being independent, me being self-reliant, me being very much in control and having the authority to be who I wanted to be, that was what being an empowered, fierce female was all about. You know, standing on 2 feet, not relying on anyone else. That was what I thought empowerment was in my early 20s. And there's been 2 experiences in my life where I felt sort of filled to here with empowerment. One was when I was 24, and one was about 3 years ago. And in both of those occasions, I kind of stood at a fork in the road. You know those Gwyneth Paltrow sliding doors moments? Only mine wasn't as simple as just missing a train. In both occasions, I could see the pathways, the 2 pathways that lay ahead of me, and I could see the consequences of both. And I knew that I was probably going to piss a few people off, no matter which way I went. I was probably going to be told by my family I was crazy. They tell me that a lot. I was probably going to find out who my real friends were. And I was going to move from quite a stable situation to an uncertain one. And I look back on those 2 times and I think, how was I not petrified? How was I not filled with fear? Because at both of those times, I was filled with this incredible sense of empowerment. And I was listening to my gut when I was making that decision. And I moved headstrong in the direction of what my gut was telling me to do with such confidence and such faith and conviction. You know, what was it that empowered me to do that? And in writing this, I realised that, there was one common thing between both. And that was that I knew deep within me that I had the safety of having my family and my friends, my true friends, that would support me no matter what my decision was. So today what I'd like to share with you is that I think empowerment actually has nothing to do with independence or self-reliance. I think empowerment takes a village. The having it all picture that we are painted by the media, but also gladly from older generations who have paved the way for us women to have more opportunities and more reasons to find a way to have it all. You know, that we wear all these different hats. We are mother, wife, we are the career woman. We also forget sometimes that we're daughter, we're sister. We wear all of these hats. And ultimately it is a picture of also doing it all. And I think that picture is really disempowering because it kind of looks a little bit more like this. And the disempowering nature of trying to do it all ultimately leaves most of us feeling incredibly exhausted, really inadequate, and often really alone. So back to the 24-year-old who thinks she's got it all because she's got all this stuff. How did I get from there to here on this stage where I'm telling you that actually to be empowered you need a village around you? Well, I can remember quite clearly the night that my view of empowerment started to change, and it had a beautiful view like this. And I was at an amazing event. My role at Channel 10 afforded me invitations to a lot of amazing parties. And this was one of them. It was a music industry party on the water with free-flowing Veuve Clicquot, an A-lister invite list, and beautiful hors d'oeuvres that were delicate and in limited supply. So by about 10 p.m, I was ravenous. And I tried in vain to find a restaurant that would take a group of intoxicated individuals in on a Monday night. And that didn't work out. So we ended up at McDonald's in the Cross. Disgusting. And not really something that I would usually do. And as I sat across from my colleagues and my client, and inhaled 4 cheeseburgers in one sitting. Really not standard behaviour for me. It's about halfway through my 4th cheeseburger and I was like, what is that all about? What am I doing? And then kind of dawned on me in my intoxicated state, and I started kind of doing this mental count. And then I started counting on my fingers and I went, oh, I think I might be pregnant. I was 24, pregnant, and did I mention single? So a fork in the road, definitely. But interestingly, I did not question moving forward and having my son. My son's name is Jai. I didn't question that for a minute. It was incredibly scary and it was a big shock when I found out that I was pregnant. But I was filled with this sense of certainty that this was the path I was supposed to take. And I could have undermined the sense of empowerment that came with that certainty by worrying about what other people would think. And some of the most interesting conversations of my life were telling people at 24 and single that I was pregnant, because people would go, huh? What? How? So it was interesting. But my mother was incredibly supportive, and she was the only person to squeal with delight when I told her, God love her. My brother did tell me I was crazy, but he also lived with me for the first few years of my son's life as his mark of support. And wow, did I find out who my friends were. You know, when people used to ask, I used to tell them that I was a solo parent. And I made the distinction between solo and single because I know a lot of single parents, and they still have the support and the ability to share the role and responsibility of parenting with the other parent. It's just that they don't live together. They may not be in the same in a relationship anymore. As a solo parent, it was just me. I was it. And there was no involvement, support from my child's birth father. So as a solo mother, I have also been dad too. I have been, the sole breadwinner and the maker of lunches. I have been the sole caretaker of the home as well, and often the handy woman. I'm exceptionally handy with a hammer. I have also worked since my son was just 6 months old, full time. So if that sounds incredibly hard and sometimes lonely, well, I'm not about to correct you there. There have been days and sometimes weeks where I've felt incredibly alone, really overwhelmed, and really inadequate. So how have I, over the last 10 years, how have I maintained a sense of empowerment and gone on to do the things that I have done? Well, I took the short course in learning that empowerment was not about independence, self-reliance, or control. I thought that's what it was, but I had this now small child on my hip who demanded everything from me and relied completely on me for his well-being and for his safety. And I couldn't provide that for him, let alone for myself, if I didn't reach out to the people that loved me and ask them for assistance. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and I completely agree. The people that came in those first few months and, scooped the baby up and sat on the couch and made idle chit-chat while they gooed and garred over him, and I tried desperately not to fall asleep, they were not my village. It was the people that rocked up, casserole in hand, gave me a hug, a little goo and gar with my son Jai, and then made short work of the laundry pile. They were my village. The people that turned up with, essential groceries in hand, took one look at me and said, go to bed, and scooped him up, put him in the pram, and took him for a walk. They were my village. And at 25, as I was living this decision to raise my child on my own, it occurred to me that I really just needed to get over myself. The notion of self-reliance and independence and that feeling empowering, those rules no longer applied. And the laundry pile offers and the casseroles, they don't last forever. They come thick and fast in the beginning. And then after a short while, you've actually got to learn to ask for that assistance. And if any of you are like me, and I know that statistically many of you are, the thought of asking someone for help, the thought of ringing someone and saying, I am not coping, he won't stop crying, I have no idea what to do, I am this far away from throwing my baby out the window, please help me. even ringing a friend and saying something like that goes completely against what we as a generation of empowered women have been raised to do. It feels like weakness. It feels like, admitting that I don't have all the answers, admitting that I'm not completely under control here, that feels like weakness. And so I would come up with every excuse under the sun as to why I should not do that. Oh, she's at work. I shouldn't bother her. It's too late at night. Too early in the morning. I think she's on a date. I probably shouldn't bother her. Oh, he will not understand what this is like. I went through all of them. And that struggle to be self-reliant, to go, no, I can do this myself. It went on for years, and if I'm really honest, it still occurs. I have tough days where I bunker down and I go, no, I can do this myself. But ultimately, I've learned over time to trust individuals and turn to them and ask for help when I need it. And in fact, I've learned that it's not a weakness at all. It was actually a TED talk a couple of years ago that kind of put a name to this for me. And it was one Miss Brene Brown who talked about the power of vulnerability. And when I first watched this, I literally thought she was speaking to me. I was like, she's like John Edwards, honestly. But ultimately, she's not John Edwards. She's a researcher who has years and years and years of hard data to prove that vulnerability is actually the birthplace of strength and is the birthplace of human connection. So what I'd been doing by relying on my village, turning to my friends and my family, letting them see my vulnerable side because I was telling them I wasn't coping, and asking for their assistance, that is what has empowered me to be a better parent, to be a better friend, and also has inspired me as an entrepreneur. Which brings me to my next fork in the road. In 2009, in the space of a couple of months, I decided to A, leave my very steady, well-paying job to become a consultant on my own. B, divorce my husband, who I'd only married 9 months previous to that, and that required me to move house. So 3 big things all at once, a little bit of a stressful time. However, all the things that I had learned about being vulnerable and being authentic were now very much a part of me. And whilst we had the best of intentions walking down the aisle, my husband and I, that was sort of devoid in our relationship. We didn't have that, it was missing. The need to be vulnerable was something quite inherent in me now though. So I wasn't prepared to live the rest of my life without it, and so I left. And for reasons quite similar, I also left my job. I'd been working for 10 years for media companies and advertising agencies where I'd been told lots of times by men about what a great job I was doing, that I had a very bright future at the company. But I was always told to stop questioning the status quo. And I am a questioner. I ask why about everything. It annoys people usually. But I've been doing it since I was very young. It helps me as a strategist, but to toe the corporate line and to just forget about the things that I would see where I thought that could be done better, or we could be bigger if we did that. That felt really disempowering to me, and it felt really inauthentic. And so I made that leap, and I went out on my own and I started consulting. And just like being a single parent and all the lessons that I had with that, I realised that as a solopreneur, I could probably achieve this much if I was consulting on my own. However, if I surrounded myself, just as I did when I was raising my child, with a village of independent, collaborative experts in their fields around me, I could probably achieve a lot more. So the Village Agency was born. And the Village Agency is a collaborative of freelance, independent experts in their fields in the marketing industry. We all run our businesses independent of one another, and we live all over the place. But we come together, we coalesce using virtual technology around projects, around clients, around creative ideas, to become a support network for each other, to help each other succeed on our own, but also collectively. It's a really empowering business model that is not necessarily new, but it's certainly one that has opened my eyes to the flexibility that we can have. It allows me to pick up my son at 3:30 in the afternoon from school every day. It allows me to spend school holidays with him, to take him on overseas trips and just take my laptop with me and do some work every now and again. It allows me to decide when, where, and how I'm going to work, and who I'm going to work with as well. And I work with some amazing creative professionals. But it's not all sunshine, kittens and roses. I know that you out there who are working mothers, you would know what it's like. You balance making an impression at work or running your own business with making sure you can be at paper mache on a Friday afternoon before school gets out. You balance the meeting that deadline or sealing that deal at work with filling the pantry and making sure that the house is tidy and that there's beautiful, healthy meals on the table. You play nurse to scratched knees. You play taxi to sporting commitments. You remember to ring your parents. You remember to buy presents for your friends and for your school birthday parties. You turn up to fundraising committees and school council meetings, and somewhere in there we manage to find time to get a haircut and maybe a spot of yoga or maybe a night out without the children. If that sounds exhausting, well, it is. That is the week in the life of a working parent. And that's what having it all feels like for today's woman. I was once shown this, and it's a brain scan of a male brain in a rest state. He's not asleep, he's just not doing anything. He's not performing any tasks. And this is what's going on in his brain. Compare that to the female brain, also in a rest state. Now, it's not hard science, it's probably a little bit more humour. I am not a scientist, I'm a marketer. But this is what having it all looks like to a neuroscientist. Because what's going on in her brain, I can tell you from being a marketer, is that she's worried about meeting that deadline at work tomorrow and whether her colleagues think that she's pulling her weight at work. She's worried about whether or not she's a good enough parent. She's thinking about buying milk tomorrow. She's probably worried about the finances of the family because she controls them. And she's also trying to work out how on earth she can tell her husband that she's too exhausted to have sex tonight. So can we have it all? Well, I'd like to suggest that I think we can have it all. We just can't do it all ourselves. I think we need to learn that asking for help is not weakness. Showing vulnerability, particularly in the moment when you need that help the most, can be such an empowering thing to do. It might feel like a new type of empowerment, but it's very empowering. It might mean that you need to make some compromises to have it all. You might need to hire a cleaner. You might need to ask that colleague for help so that you can meet that deadline. Or you might just need to let go of the mother guilt about putting your child in care. Whatever it is, let go of it and turn to your village for assistance. And the final thing I'll leave you with is don't wait to be asked. Go and help out someone in your village, someone you respect and admire, because you'd be surprised how empowering that can be as well. Thank you.